here with the Virtual Robotics Studio, and we're back. In this video, we've got a whole bunch of polycarbonate parts that we got to cut out and pre-drill some holes in. So that's going to be our goal. Hopefully you've got your 2x4 sheet of 1/1/8 or 1/8 inch thick polycarbonate. If you have bigger, obviously that's going to work. If it's smaller, well, you'll have to figure out how to line your, lay your parts out to make them fit. But everything fits nicely in one 2x4. Make sure you have some kind of saw. You can do this with a hand saw. It's just plastic. Or a circular saw. All of our edges are going to be straight lines, so a circular saw works great. Or if you have a jigsaw, basically any powered saw is going to work well. All right, we're going to get started on all of these parts, but before we do, we're going to give another special thanks to Argosy, First, Aramco, and Team 302 Lake Orion High School. All right, so first thing you might want to do is to print out the drawings of all the parts that we're going to be working with. So we have KB 26004, KB 26005, KB 26006, and finally KB 26014. So these are all of the parts that are going to be made from this sheet of polycarbonate. We'll kind of pop them up on the screen too as we're going, so if you don't have a copy, you'll probably be okay. But it does help to kind of print one out and have it handy so you can double check all the things that we are doing. What you'll notice is, as we try to figure out how to lay this out on our sheet, I think with the exception of 26005, we can see the width of all these parts. So this one, 26004, is 17.625 inches wide. And 26006 is also 17.625 inches wide. And 26014 is also 17.625 inches wide. So these three pieces are all the same width. So if we cut a section of the polycarb down to 17.625 inches, then we can go ahead and cut these out of that section as we go. So that's good to know. And then the other piece that we have here, this is the 26005. This one is 15 inches wide. So this one is going to be a different size. We could, in theory, have it cut down to 17.625 and then cut this section down to 15 at the end. But I think it's going to be a little bit better if we do it a different way. So this is 13.119 inches on the long edge. So this one is kind of like a weird triangle shape. It's 13.119 on this edge. The other edge is 8.736. So if we add these two together, that's going to be 21, almost 22 inches. But our piece is 24 inches across. So I think what makes the most sense is if we take two of these and we go across on one edge of our thing, we can cut out a 15-inch strip and make the two pieces out of that. And then with what's left, we can cut that down so that we have 17.625 across, and then we can cut our other three out of that section. So let's do a quick layout kind of on the entire piece of plastic here just to make sure everything fits before we start cutting. I do not want to have to run to the store and buy another piece of polycarbonate for us there. So my plan was, off this edge, we're going to go in 15 inches. And so let's measure that out. So if we go in 15 from this edge, and then something about these parts is you want to get close to the right dimension, but there is some amount of, it's okay if you're a little bit off one way or the other, these parts are still going to work. So let me see, actually, let me get a little bit farther over here. I want to get the edge of my line on the 15. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to do one more 15 mark kind of on the other side of this piece. And do your best when you do this to get your tape measure straight. All right, so 15 would be right there. Okay, so then we would be looking at connecting those two up. And if you do have one of these big framing squares, you might be able to use the edge and use the square of your framing square. But I can already tell this edge, I think I cut at some point and does not look straight. This edge, the other side, maybe that one's straight. Let's see how that one looks. That one is close to straight, but if I go out to my lines, Oh yeah, that one is definitely straight. So we could definitely mark off that edge. So I'm going to line up here on those lines and just kind of carry that line all the way across. Okay, so that's the first part. And let's see, this piece, as it so happens, we're going to cut this diagonal line, but if we take a second one of these and we flip it over and flip it over, it's going to match. So we would end up with a big rectangle, and we can share that diagonal cut. So if I want to put one of these off this edge, we're going to mark, so we want on this line to be 13.119 inches in from the end. 13.119 is kind of a wild dimension. 13.125 would be 1/8 of an inch. So we are 6/1000ths of an inch under 1/8. It's probably fine if we just mark it 1/8. So I'm going to look for 13 and then 1/8. I mean, I guess in theory, I don't even know if you can be a 16th or 6/1000ths of an inch off. So we're going to go 13 and 1/8 here. And I'm going to try to remove my line. So I'm going to do it so the edge of my line goes in from there. Okay, that is 1 point. Then on the other side of this piece, we need our shorter side, which is 8.736, which is 1.4 hundredths of an inch less than 8 3/4. So we're basically going to look for 8 3/4, and I want to be right out on the outside edge of my piece here. And we're going to 8 3/4 minus just like a hair. So 8 3/4 minus just a hair. That looks like there maybe. All right. So now what we know is we need to connect from this point right here on the line to this point right here on the outside of our whole piece of plastic, right? So we're going to connect right from the edge to the edge. So let's get a tape measure, or not a tape measure, a straight edge here. Let's flip this over. Let's not flip it over. It's got to get that T edge in a nice spot. All right. So we're going to go from the edge there to the edge here. All right. Okay, that is pretty close. I think I said I wanted to remove this line, so I think I missed this end by a tiny bit. So we'll be just a little bit over. All right, that looks good. All right, we can double check now too, just to make sure we didn't get too far off. So this one should be, this should be 13 inches, and I'm nowhere close to 13 inches. All right. I'm not sure what I measured to, but it was not the right number. Let's do this again. I think I measured to 11 1/8, not 13 1/8. We're going to do that again, and this is why double checking your measurements is always helpful. All right, so 13 1/8 inches is actually right here. Okay. My other end is good though, right? 8 and just under 3/4. Yeah, the other end is good. All right, let's draw the new line. The new real line. Okay. That looks better. Okay, and now what we want to do, so like all of this is our first part. So this is going to be, what is this called? KB, we can label it KB 26005. And, right, if we remember, this is 13 and just under 1/8. What we need to do is we need to make sure that we have over 13 1/8 coming from this side on our leftover, and we do. This is all the way to like 15. So we have plenty of room here to make the second piece work. But like I said, after we make this cut, essentially we're just going to flip this piece over and over, and then we can even just trace it for where we want the other cut to be, so we have two pieces that are identical, because we can share this cut. But what I can't do is measure from here down and make my next line going across, because when I cut this line, depending on if I cut it perfectly in the middle of the line or if I'm off one way or the other, or even if it is perfect, the saw blade is going to remove material. So we can't mark the next one until it's done, but we know somewhere, right, like in this neighborhood, it's going to work, and we're going to have our second KB 26005. So we do need two of this piece. These are going to be the sides of the hopper where we store the cargo or the fuel, the game pieces. All right, so that works. Then after we cut, we'll kind of make this cut to get our strip out. Then we can cut the diagonal. Then we can mark. Then we can cut the next one. Then we want to mark our next three pieces. And these were all 17.625 wide. So let's go ahead and try to get 17.625 in off this edge. So let's go ahead and, I could mark with that, but I think I prefer measuring with the tape measure. So somewhere around here, we're going to do 17.625. So that's 17 and 5/8. So 17, 1/2, and then 1 more eighth past the half is what we're looking for. So 17 and 5/8. All right. And so the line is going to go. Everything on the inside of the line works. And then I'm going to slide this over a little bit so we can get the other edge here. So if we come down all the way to the other end of our whole thing, we can make another mark at 17 and 5/8. Looks good. And then we can see how square this edge of our piece is. That's pretty close to square too. Of course, if yours is not, just adjust your tape measure or your straight edge so it's in a good spot. We'll do this line. All right. And just like before, we can't attach anything off this edge, because if we mark something off this edge that we're going to cut, we don't know exactly where that edge is going to end up. But we can mark our first piece off this side, and we can do any of these three pieces. I guess we'll start with the lowest number, 26004. So this one is going to be 11.5 inches wide. So from here, we're going to go to 11.5. Okay, and I'm looking to remove that line. I'll do an 11.5 on this side as well, 11.5. Remove the line. And we can mark this one up. Okay. And we can label this one. This one is going to be KB 26004. And the last thing we want to check, like I said, we can't now mark the next one because we're going to cut here, so we don't know where the edge is going to be. We're going to have to wait until after we make our cut to mark it. But we want to make sure we have enough space here for our last two pieces. And the next one is going to be 6.3 inches. So 6.313, that's 6 and 5/16, I believe. All right, so we're just going to eyeball that. So it's 6 and a quarter plus a 16th. So we're going to be somewhere around here. Of course, that's not exact because, you know, the cuts are going to mess us up. And then our last one is, so that one was KB 26014, and then KB 26006 is 8.75 inches. So if we kind of line that up, we can see 8.75 is going to leave us plenty of room. We've got a bunch of space. That's actually enough space to make one more of the small ones if we needed to, if we made a mistake on that one. All right, so this looks like a pretty good layout. So I think we are ready to start making our cuts. So again, the cuts are going to go in order. First, we're going to rip off our KB 26005s, that 15 inches. We're going to cut that first. Then we can finish our KBs. Then we'll come and take this whole section down to the right width, make our first one, then mark the next one, cut it, then mark the last one and cut it. All right. Let's move a few things around. Now, there are a couple of ways you can do this. If you have a jigsaw, if you only have a manual saw and you're going through, then just follow the line as closely as you can. If you have a table saw, that's probably the best because you just move the fence to the right position and you can push it through. This is plastic. It will cut with most things. So table saws would be fine, jigsaws would be fine, hand saws would be fine. Even if the saw is made for wood, it's probably going to work. I have a circular saw. So with the circular saw, if I want to get a really straight line cut, I can use the edge here of the guide, or as a guide. So if I have something that I can run this against, I can make the cut straight instead of freehanding it. So that's something that we could try to do. Let me see. If we put this off the edge of the table, what actually ends up happening is when the saw blade is lined up, with the end here, if I have another line or I have something clamped this distance away from the line, I'll have that as a guide running all the way across. And that distance appears to be, let's measure it. It appears to be 1.5 inches. So if I go 1.5 inches over from here, then that's going to work, except I also have to move over the width of the blade because that's going to be to the outside edge of the blade. So if I flipped everything over and had the big end hanging off, then I could go 1.5 inches, but instead we got to add, let's say, 1/16 of an inch for the blade. So from this line, what I'm going to do, which was 15, I'm going to do another mark at we said plus 1.5 inches and 1/16. So I'm going to go 1.5 inches to 16.5 plus 1/16. And now the outside edge of this line is where I'm going to want to line up my straight edge, my guide. We'll do the same thing on this side. So it's 15, 16.5 plus one more 1/16 of an inch. Oh, whoop. And I forgot which side of the line I wanted. I want the line to be visible when I'm done. Okay. So then we're looking to clamp something there, making sure the line I'm going to cut is off the edge of the table. Tends to be good not to cut into the table if you can help it. And I could use this as a guide if you don't have something like this, a big layout square or ruler. You can also just get any old piece of metal. So like this piece of box, 1x1 box, will also work. You could clamp that down and make it work. I'm going to do this one because I think it's a little bit lower so it's easier to see past it. So I need a couple clamps to help hold it down on either side. So we'll grab these quick ones here. And like I said, we want to go just up to the edge of the line. And I need to clamp a ways off the piece. You can see, because my saw, when it comes through, if the clamp is right here, it's going to hit the clamp before I finish cutting. So we got to have the clamps moved a little bit away in order for this to work. And same thing on the side we're starting on. So clamp those down, but that is still keeping the piece from moving nicely. All right, that looks lined up pretty good to me. And I do like to always double check when I go in. Oh, I might have been, yep, we're too close with this clamp. This one might have to go all the way to the edge. And we'll see. Yeah, now we're good. Okay, so I'm going to just bring the saw in and see where it looks like that line, or where we are compared to the line. And if I remember correctly, we want the line to disappear, but it looks like I am on the wrong side of that line still. So my blade is going to cut the line, but my cut is going to be just to the inside of the line. And I think when we measured this, the piece we want to save is to the inside of the line. So my 16th of an inch was a little bit too small of an adjustment. So I'm just going to push this past the line. I'm going to eyeball it because I think we can get pretty close that way. But I'm just going to push it past the line by about the amount that it looked like my saw blade was off. And we'll do that on both sides. And now when we bring the blade in, that looks like it's going to rip right on the line, which is going to leave the inside where we want it to be. All right, so now we're ready to go ahead and start cutting. All right, it didn't like the end there. Looks like it bent and caught a little bit, so it actually broke the end off. I think that's okay because if you remember, from where this line was, we just need, what was it, 8.75 inches. And so our piece is going to end above where that piece broke off. So that's unfortunate, but not going to hurt anything. All right, let's unclamp this. And I'll set this piece down. Get plenty of this. Plastic shavings everywhere. All right, now we're looking to make this cut. And again, we could just sort of clamp this down and freehand it, or we can try our best, again, to set a guide up for us. So let's do the guide. I like that. All right, and if you remember what the dimensions were, oh, okay, off this side. Yep, this is the good side. This is the chipped side. All right, so that first one was 8 3/4. Remember, just under 8 3/4. So we need to add to that, and let's see, we're going to be cutting, we'll be clamped on this one. Yeah, we need to add 1.5 inches to that. I think we're on the good side, so 8 3/4 plus 1 inch is 9 3/4 plus 1/2 is 10 1/4. So 10 1/4 right here. And then on the other side, we were, this was the 13 and just under 1/8, I believe. Let's double check that number. All right, it is 13, yeah, 0.119. So 13 and just under 1/8 of an inch. All right. And we're going to go now to 14 and just under 1/8, and then 14 1/2 plus just under 1/8. So just under 14 5/8 right there. All right. And we don't really need this line because we're not, we're not watching it go by. But that is where we're going to clamp our, wait, did I get it wrong? If we clamp here. Oh, I put it on the wrong side. Well, okay. We're going to be on this side. So we probably are going to have to adjust this for the width of the blade again because we are cutting on the side of the piece that we want to keep. So we'll go ahead and get it clamped on and we'll see how it looks when we bring the saw up to look at it. I like to get that, just about on the edge of the table. We'll go ahead and clamp it down on both ends. And when we bring the saw up, yes, we're going to be on the inside of the line, and we wanted to remove the line. So I need to be on the line. So again, we're just going to have to adjust this by essentially the thickness of the blade. It should be about there. That is the same gap on both sides. And that is looking pretty good. Okay, make sure everything is tight, and let's go for it. All right. That one did a little better at the end. Still a little bit of a, took a little bit of a chip out. But I think it's going to be fine. All right, now we have our first one. Let's double check that we got it pretty good. So this first edge should be, this is our long edge. So this is the 13 and about 1/8 of an inch. And that is pretty close. We're actually just under 13 and 1/8, which I think is what we wanted. And this side should be 8 and just under 3/4. And we are 8 and probably just a tiny bit short of the goal. But it's going to be close enough for what we're doing. Certainly if you're within a 1/16 of an inch, you're fine. Probably you can be even 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch off and it's going to work. And what I was saying is now with these, we kind of just want two pieces that are the same. So if I take this and I just line it up, that is the line we are trying to cut. Which, wow, my dashes were really close to the right spot. That's cool. All right, so now we're going to make that cut. We're going to have this end hanging off. So this time, for sure, it's 1.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is, really, the dimension should come from this side, right, to this line. So I'm not going to be able to measure in from this side and decide that's what it needs to be. But what I can do, in order to get my extra 1.5 inches here, is if I just see where this line is at this point, which is 2 and, so the inside of the line is 2 1/8. Adding 1.5 inches to that would be 3 1/2 plus 1/8. So 3 5/8. So I know this side is 1.5 inches. And then instead of using the same dimension, like I'm not going to say, okay, that's it, 3 5/8. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to get my dimension on this side as well, right? So when I measure this side, you know what? I mean, it's really darn close. So looks like this edge is pretty flat through this section. So I'm again at 2 and, oh wait, let me double check. That was 2 1/8. Yeah. So on this side, we're off by a little bit. So this side, the right side of the line is at 2 1/8. On the other one, the left side of the line was at 2 1/8. So on this side, the edge of the line is at like 2 1/16. So again, we'll go to 3 1/2. So 2 plus 1 1/2 gets us to 3 1/2 plus 1/16. So we'll be at 3 1/16. All right, now we have our two marks where we're going to clamp it, and then we can go ahead and cut this piece. It is always good to kind of like make sure this is sitting flat on the table when you go to clamp it up. The plastic will crush fairly well, but it's still like everything sitting nice and flat is going to just help with your accuracy. All right. So we're going to be right on the, going to basically just completely cover the line is how I marked it. All right, and then when we line this up, that ain't it. Once again, I think I failed to account for the saw blade. So I'm going to once again basically go to the other side of the Sharpie line, because that's about how thick the saw blade is. And that looks much better. All right, so we are lined up, ready to take this last bit off. Let's go for it. And let's see, do we have two that are relatively the same size? Yeah, that's about as close as I'm going to be able to get. And the cool part is because, they shared the diagonal, we know they're going to fit together nicely like this. But even if this is curved, it's still going to be okay. Okay, that is two of our KB26005s almost done. There's a couple more things on the drawing here, and it shows on each corner, it gives us a radius. It says that each corner should be radiused at about 1/4 of an inch. No, at 1/8 of an inch radius. So 1/4 of an inch diameter hole. So basically, it wants us to have radiuses on the edge. And what it's calling out, therefore, is not that it needs to be exactly 1/4 of an inch. I can tell you the way this goes together, it doesn't have to be any specific number, but we cut and we got these really sharp edges. So what we want to do is take a file and just round that edge over, just like we did when we were cutting the metal for the chassis. And you can eyeball it to 1/4 of an inch. Doesn't have to, like I said, doesn't have to be perfect at all. And this is a good one too. Like obviously with the file, I have a very coarse file. I think with the metal I was using a much finer file, but this does it pretty fast and knocks it down. So it's still just taking a few kind of curling arounds. But this probably would be faster if you took it over to the power tool. So if you have a disc sander or some kind of grinder, you could probably go over there and just round the corner off very quickly. But feel like I'm enjoying this process, so I'm just going to go ahead and file my corners here. You can see there's a little bit of that chip at the end of this cut, so I can file the top of this as well, just to kind of get rid of that sort of sharp split edge. Looks good. And then this corner here. Okay, we'll have the sides of this that we also probably are going to want to file, but I don't want to mess up this covering yet because I'm going to use that to help mark where we're drilling holes. So we'll do that part later. We can go ahead and hit these corners really quickly to get that round over, that radius for our second one. This one also, the end was a little questionable. That looks good. One and two. Three. And the fourth one. All right, now if you are a team of many people working on this, this would be the time where the person who's kind of doing the cutting can pass these two pieces off to somebody else. They can go work on marking the holes and drilling the parts, which you can skip further ahead in this video to get to that point. But because I am one person working here, I'm going to finish cutting and making all of the mess here first, then clean up a bit and come back and drill, which means we're going to bring that main board back up, that main piece that we were working on back up, and start our next cut. So we already had marked out when we did the full layout on here. We had marked out where we want KB 26004. But if you remember, essentially we need all of our next pieces to be on that 17 and I believe 5/8. I'm going to look it up just so I don't repeat the wrong number to you. Yeah, 17.625, 17 and 5/8. So the first step is we want to rip down this line. Then we have the right width, so then it's just make cuts for whatever width that individual piece needs. Now, it's been long enough for me, and my memory's not great. I can't remember whether I want this line over here to be gone or to be kept as part of the piece. So I'm just going to measure over and see. 17 and 5/8. Okay, this line should be gone. The inside edge of this line is good. So that's what we're going to line up for. And I think we're going to do the same thing. So this time we will be cutting on the scrap part. So again, this should be accounting for the width of our piece. So when we go ahead and measure this one up, I'm going to add, again, I'm going to use that guide, right? So I'm going to add my 1.5 here to this. So this is at 6, and the inside edge here is at 6 1/4. So an 1.5 is going to take me to, let's see, so 6 1/4, so 7 1/4, 7 3/4, and then I need, let's see, do I need to account for the saw blade or not? I've guessed every time, I've been wrong every time. In this case, I think I do need to account for the saw blade as well. So I'm going to try 6 1/4, 7 1/4, 7 3/4 plus about 1/8 of an inch. Looks like the 16th was a little short last time. We'll do the same thing on this side. This side measures out to also 6 1/4. So 8 3/4 plus about 1/8 of an inch. All right. So now, let's move some things out of the way. We're going to try to get this clamped up on those marks. Okay, right to the edge. Right to the edge. All right, and then let's see how it's looking. That looks just a hair too far. So I think it is the inside edge of my Sharpie line, not the outside edge of my Sharpie line. Let me tighten this side down and check it, and then we'll go adjust the other side if that is the case. Yes, that is the case. It is perfect on the inside edge of the Sharpie line here. All right, so inside edge of this Sharpie line as well. And all right, so now I'm covering the Sharpie line, and I think we're ready to make this cut. I also think I might want to lower the blade just a little bit. That might be why it was kicking up at the end so violently. So let's just drop it down a tiny bit. All right. Looks good. Let's go for a cut here. Okay. You can see just a little bit. I was maybe a little bit crooked, but that is 17 and should be 5/8, and we're looking right at 17 and 5/8. I might just be a hair long on that side, and on this side, it's pretty much right on. So I think that's going to be good enough for us. Can release this for a second. And we're already marked for our next piece, right? So we've got KB26004 here ready to go. But I do need to add my extra. This time we'll be cutting on the side that we want to keep, so we definitely need to add the width of the blade. All right, so KB26004 is, let me find the page here. All right, this should be 11.5 inches. I can see that we are, 11.5 to the inside of this line. So from the inside of this line, 11.5, we're going to go to, 13 is 1.5 inches plus the width of the blade. So we're going to go to about here. And then the same thing on this side. 13.5 plus the width of the blade. I marked this one at 13 plus the width of the blade. 13 and a half. Wait, it should be 13 plus. Yeah, okay. Not 13 and a half. So 11 and a half plus 1.5 is 13 plus the width of the blade. All right. That's the right spot. Now they're the same. All right, same process. Let's get the guide clamped on. And then we can check ourselves. That looks good because we want the line to disappear, right? Yes, we want the line to disappear. All right, I think we're good. Make sure that's out of the way enough, and let's go for it. Is that... I need a little more space. It's going to hit, and I don't want to start in the plastics. So we'll move this over just 1 more inch. And here we go. All right, you can see the line is mostly gone. But who knows if my line was drawn on straight. All right, that is just a hair over 11 and a half and just about 11 and a half on the other side. So this piece is looking good. We'll save this again. We're going to have to do all the corners on this and clean the edges up. We'll make our other 2 cuts first. So we'll keep the drawing with it. We've got it labeled. Next up is KB 26006. And KB 26006 is 8.75 inches long. All right, so we're doing 8.75 in from the edge here. Okay, so we'll do 2 marks right away as we go. So first is going to be 8.75. Okay, and I want that line to disappear when we cut. And then I might as well, while we're at it, mark the next one. My guideline, which is going to be 1.5 inches farther. So let's see, 8 3/4. So we're going to be 9 3/4, 10 1/4. And in this case, we need the thickness of the blade. So 10 1/4 plus my blade's about 1/8 of an inch, it seems like. All right, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So this was, again, 8.75. We'll do a mark where we want to cut. Okay, 8.75. And then we're going to go to 10 1/4 plus the width of the blade. All right, and because I'm using the guide, in theory, I don't need to mark this line, the actual cut line. Because we're kind of going to be committed based on where we clamp all our supports up. But I am going to mark it just so we can watch what's happening and we can know we're lined up well on the beginning. And then I won't bother marking the other one because we won't even be able to see that one. That one is going to be under the clamps. All right. Start clamping this one up. I think I want the outside of my line here, but we'll check. Okay, we want the inside of my line. Yeah, right. I remember now. I marked the inside of the line to be what I wanted. The rest of it should be underneath the thing. All right. And let's see where the saw is hitting. That looks correct. All right, let's cut. Well, let me label the side we're going to keep. So this is the side we're going to keep, which is KB 26006. All right, and it should be 8.75. Looks good. All right, let's do it. All right, that one is good. And we've got one more to go. This one is KB 26014. And this one is 6.313 inches. So we'll do all of our marks again. 6.313, again, is 6 1/4 plus a 16th. So 6 5/16 inches. So 6 1/4 plus a 16th. I want to remove the line where I marked it. 6 1/4 plus a 16th. And again, we want to remove the line. Let's go ahead and get ourselves our cut line all the way across so we can see where it is going to end up. All right, that time the square did not match. Let's see. Yep. So I got to readjust that just a tiny bit. Kind of trusted the square, but my last cut might have been a little bit crooked, so now we can't trust the square anymore. All right. So again, we're cutting to this edge of the line, so that's fine. This is going to be KB 26014. And let's not put the pen away. Let's mark our extra 1.5 inches plus the width of the blade. So it's basically 6 1/4 plus the 16th, so 6 1/4, 7 1/4, 7 3/4 plus a 16th plus about the width of the blade. So we're going to be somewhere right around there. I'm adding about, like I said, just under 1/8 of an inch for the blade width. And again, so that should be at 8, like a 16th under 8 maybe. So we're going to be right about there. All right, and last one to get clamped up here. And I believe this time that we want to be covering the line. We'll see. That looks like, yet again, I've guessed wrong. All right, we're going to show the line. All right, that looks on. All right, let's make our last cut here. Okay, We can see how this is looking. It might have been a little crooked. Well, let's measure. That is, yes, definitely crooked. We might have to fix this one. So this one is correct on that side, but this side, and we can even see the extra material there. This is supposed to be just over 6 1/4. Actually, that's pretty close. This is just over by a tiny bit. I think it's actually going to be fine. All right. That is all of the pieces cut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit all the corners to radius them. And then I'm going to clean up all of the plastic shavings that we have here, our polycarbonate snowfall. And then we'll come back and mark up and drill the holes. All right, we're back. Cleaned up the area, got the drill ready, because that's going to be our next step. And we've got all of our pieces with the corners rounded. And like I said, we're still going to have to come back and clean up the edges where we made the cuts, but the rounded corners are really the sharpest part, so it's nice to get that cleaned up and taken care of first. All right, we can go through this in any order, but I think we're going to start with KB26004. So I'm going to stack my other ones up off on the side here. Now, KB26004 is interesting. There are a lot of holes on this part, but we don't need to drill all of them at this point. So there is a note on here which says the 8X holes at the bottom of this part should be match drilled using KB26003 intake base plate from the black tote. That means there is the piece that already exists with all of those holes in it. What we can do later is when we start assembling that piece, we can take this, clamp it in place, and just drill right through all the holes that are in that piece of aluminum so we know they line up. If we try to measure all these holes now and drill them all blind, when we go to line it up, some of them are going to be off by a little bit, and we're going to have to come back and probably re-drill those holes. So if we look at this drawing, there are these 3 diagonal holes on each side, and then the 2 in the middle, right? And I can make it be right side up for you and upside down for me. So those are the ones we're not going to do. We don't need to do these 3, or these 2 in the middle. That's the 8 bottom holes. And we're going to start with these holes on the side and then get the holes all the way on this other edge. Now, all of these holes that we're going to drill, we can find there is this arrow here, which is the call out. That's telling us what size the holes are. So it says 11X, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So these bigger size holes are all 1/4 inch. So that's what we're going to be drilling for this one. So I've got my 1/4 inch drill bit, and we'll go ahead and put that in the drill just to get ready. We will have to go back and mark everything still, of course. All right, so those holes, all the 1/4 inch holes, are going to be used for zip ties. So we're going to have zip ties going through from this panel to the panels next to it. That's kind of how we're going to hold our whole box structure together. This is sort of like the hopper where we store all the fuel, all the balls inside the robot. What that means is these holes really can be off by a bit, and it's not going to affect the robot. So if we are 1/4 of an inch to the left or to the right, the zip tie is still going to go around the corner or around the 2 holes at that little bit of an angle and still hold everything together. Now, we're going to do our best to put it in the right spot, but just know that these holes really, as long as we're inside the plate and we don't drill it too far out so it pops out the edge, we're going to be in good shape. So let's start working on these. We can make either side of this the same, right, because it is just a rectangle. So we'll go ahead and mark these starting on this edge. So we have this row on this edge, and then we've got a couple in a little bit, and then we have the 2 down the side. So the first thing is we're going to go in from this top edge and get our marks down. And we can see, trying to keep the paper there, but we might end up having to mark not on the coating. We'll see what happens. Okay, so on the drawing, 0 is on this side, and the line of holes here is at 11.25 inches. Now, on yours, if you measure your piece, right, like when we made it, if you are really, really good to the number that it was supposed to be, which was 11.5, then it is okay to do the 11.25 up from the bottom and make those marks. But it's more important, I think, that the hole doesn't go off the edge. So if you had cut this piece and it's a little bit short, say this piece is not 11.5 inches wide, but it's only 11.25 wide, now all of a sudden when you go to drill at 11.25, you're going to be right on the edge of the piece and your hole is going to blow out the end. So we don't want that. That's the most important thing. So I think actually because of that, and based on the fact that the accuracy doesn't have to be super great on this, I'm just going to measure in from the other side. So I'm going to, normally you don't do that, right? When you have a drawing and it's zeroed from a certain side, you measure all of your things from that side to make sure that your the holes and everything is correct. In this case, because I know how this piece is being used, it's okay if we're off by that, maybe 1/8 of an inch or something if your piece is the wrong length. So let's go ahead and do that. If we're going to go in from this side, that means we're going to go in 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to use the calipers again, and we're going to set it at 0.25 or 1/4 of an inch. And if I scribe this all the way across, I'm going to get a nice line, especially where the paper was staying down, all the way through everything. Okay, and that is going to be the line where we are then going to go ahead and mark our holes. The next thing we're going to do, though, is I'm going to leave a little mark where we want to drill. So I'm going to grab a snap punch, and we're going to use the snap punch at the points and pop it in. And I'm going to use the snap punch directly. So instead of like getting the tape measure out, putting a little dot on there, and then snap punching to the dot, that's where errors can just stack up. So instead, I'm just going to line the snap punch up in the right place and drill it. So based on the drawing, this side of my piece is the 0 side. So I'm going to start my tape measure on that side. And then the first hole in, so the first hole in is not on that 1/4 inch line. This one is a little bit farther away. So we're going to skip that one for now. And instead, we're going to go to this one, which is 0.813 in on the edge. So 0.813 is going to be probably actually 8125, but that's going to be 3/4 of an inch plus a 1/16. So if I go to 3/4 of an inch and then line up my snap punch, so 3/4 is here, go one past. So I'm lined up with the next line. That's the extra 1/16 of an inch. Then I'm just going to go ahead and snap that down a few times. So we have that hole where we're going to drill. Now, this one, because of the way the paper is leaning up, it's a little hard to see where it ended up. So for that one, I am going to just kind of just leave myself a little mark here. That's where I'm going to go and drill. Don't miss it or lose track of it. All right, now we're going to continue along. So you think this is, let me see, let me slide this over here so I'm off the edge of the table. Then the tail of my tape measure gives me a little bit more room to sit everything flat. Okay, so next up is going to be 4.813. So we're going to go to 4 inches and then 4.75 plus a 1/16. So one line past 4.75. Snap that a few times. That one's really easy to see, so I'm not worried about it. 8.813, so 8 and 3/4 and one more line. Next one is 12.813, so 12 and 3/4 plus one more line. That one is getting a little bit lost, so I will leave myself a mark there so I can find it again. Okay, and then the last one on this line is 16.813, so 16 and 3/4 plus one more line. And those ones are all marked. Okay, let's mark all of them before we start drilling. So the next one that we need here, this is, it says 2x at 11.033. So that's 11 and a 32nd of an inch from this edge. And that's going to be these two holes that are slightly off the corner. So we could measure from the backside on these, which, sure, why not? So let's go ahead and first thing, though, is we want to measure in from the side, and in from the side is still going to be 1/4 of an inch. So we've got that. We'll get that scribe line. And actually, this hole, too, is going to be 1/4 of an inch in. So we can see on this side, right, it's 2 at 0.25, and then over here it's 2 at 17.375. So we're going to set the calipers back to 1/4 of an inch, 0.250. And I'll scribe down this line here. So we know there's going to be one somewhere in this neighborhood, but I'll just go all the way because I don't know for sure where the other one's going to end up. And that, again, that peeling up paper is a problem. So if you have this problem like I'm having, you can peel the paper up first. And then if you can't see where the scribe line ends up, like if you go to scribe and you can't see it very well, then this is another situation where you can add some Sharpie. So in that case, let me see. Our Sharpie is going to be about 4.3, 4 and 3/8 up. So we're going to be about here. So if I color this area in, then we can scratch away the Sharpie. And that's pretty visible for me. I think up here I do have that line going, and I'm happy with that line to the corner here, so I think I'm going to be okay there. Then on the other side, let's go ahead and see if we can get away with scribing it. So it looks like this time the second hole is going to be good, but the corner is kind of messed up for me, so I will, again, kind of color this area in. I don't know exactly where it's going to be, so I overshot it, and we'll do a little scribe line at 1/4 in. All right, now we can go ahead and start tape measuring for where those marks are going to be. So we can go from the back here. Let me see. Let me get that edge off the end of the table so my tape measure can sit flatter. All right, and we are looking for, the first one is going to be at 4.392. 4.392 is 4 and 3/8. 3/8 would be 375. And then we need to go just another couple hundredths past that. So, all right. So this is the one that we had peeled back. So 4 and 1, 2, 3/8 plus just a tiny bit more. And we're going to do it right on the, all right, make sure you get that peeled out of the way. We're going to do it right where we have that line scribe. So 4 and 3/8 plus the tiniest amount past the 3/8 line. All right, so we've got our snap punch there. And then the next one on this side was 11 and a 32nd. So we're going to go down to 11 and basically go halfway in between 11 and the first line, which is 11 and a 16th. And we'll get that one snapped in. And then we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. So we'll get that back off the table, line up the tape measure. Okay, first one, again, is at 4 and 3/8, 1, 2, 3/8, plus like a hair. And then the last one is 11, and this is where I need to peel this back. That's going to be at 11 and a 32nd. So 11 and halfway in between the lines. All right, that is all of our marks. So we are ready to drill. Obviously, when we're drilling this, like I don't want to drill through into the table. So I'm going to slide, I guess I'll slide it out so I can do this whole row, and then we'll adjust it for the other ones. You could probably get by if you had extra people on your team. One person could probably be holding this, and somebody could come through and drill. It's always kind of nicer and safer if you just clamp it, because then you know for sure it's not going to move on you, and nobody's hand is in your way. So I'm going to clamp mine up. All right, and these snap punch divots compared to the 1/4 inch drill bit, it's going to be a little bit hard to, like you can kind of feel it when it drops in. It's one of the reasons why I snap punched a few times. But you might have a hard time lining the drill bit up with just the divots because it's such a big drill bit. The accuracy, again, I don't think it matters that much, so I would just go ahead and try to drill it. But if you want to make sure you hit those points, you could start with a smaller drill bit. maybe like a 1/8 drill bit or something between 1/8 and 3/16 would be easier for you to find the divot, the snap punch divot, so you can center your hole up. And then you would drill again with 1/4 inch. But I'm going to go ahead and try to go straight to 1/4 inch because I think I can feel it kind of dropping in a little bit, and I can make sure I'm at least close. All right, so there's the first one. And the second one. Jump over here. This one I'm going to peel back so I can get to the divot because the paper was peeling up over there. All right. And then make sure this isn't sticking up and blocking the view, but we got 2 in the corner. I have 1 more on the row here. Okay, and then we have the one just around the corner that's a little bit farther out. Okay, and then we have this corner, the same 2 that we're dealing with. And there we go. Unclamp that. Okay, and we've got 1 hole on this side. Clamp it up, but make sure it's off the table. And then we're going to spin it over and find this hole. All right, now with this piece, I guess I will peel these off. And if you are ready to immediately use this piece, you can do the next step, which is where we're going to clean it up and move on. But if you're not ready and you're going to be storing this piece on the shelf, make sure you write the part number back on it because I just peeled off my label for what it is. And it's always easier to have that than to just rely on remeasuring everything. The other thing you could do is you could get stickers that go on with the part number. But you can, the Sharpie will rub off if you want to clean it off after it's built, if you don't want the number there. Usually just some alcohol, rubbing alcohol will take it off. So I am going to make a note on here that this is KB 26004. All right, now we do have to clean up the edges and the rest of the holes. So all the holes we drilled, sometimes there are even these pieces that are stuck on there, but if you feel them, right, there are huge burrs for all of these holes, and we don't really want that. So if you have one of these deburring tools, that is probably the best tool for this job. So with these, you just kind of put it in the hole and you twirl it around a few times, and it will cut down any of those burrs that are sticking out. Now, if you're using this, you do have to remember that these holes, it is plastic. It is a relatively soft material, so it's pretty easy for you to cut too much. So you want to kind of whirl it around a few times, feel it, and if it's there, you can just stop. But you can kind of turn these holes into countersink holes if you're not careful. And if you feel like I just did this one, and I can feel that this edge is pretty good, but this edge still has a little bit of a burr. So I'll go just around that side to knock that burr off. All right, let's go ahead and do all the ones on this side. Seems good. Okay, and then we got the corner ones. That one had a big chunk of stuff that was still stuck to it. That looks good. All right, and then we had, can't remember if we did this one. I think we did it. And then we have this last one over here. Okay, then we got to flip it over, and we got to do the same thing on the other side. So we'll just work our way around. That one does have a bit left. All right. Now, if you do not have this tool to deburr, there are other drill bits that are sort of deburring bits that you can use as well. You got to be really, really careful with those. I would almost do them by hand, because if you put them in the drill, like I said, you're just gonna cut into plastic so fast. Another thing you can do in a pinch, if you have a bigger drill bit, like this is a 1/2 inch drill bit. Now be careful, don't hold it where the cutting edges are because they're sharp. But if I hold it back here at the top, I can actually put this into the hole and just gently twist it by hand. I'm not gonna push down hard, but I'm mostly just spinning it, and that's gonna rub and that's gonna cut the edges as well. So that is sort of like if you have no other tools, you can get it to work with this. All right, but this piece is deburred on the edges. We have another kind of problem, which we talked about, which is all the edges where we cut are still potentially, we got sharp edges and burrs on those as well. So if you have just a file, you can do this with the file, running it all the way down. For plastic, you want kind of the coarsest file that you can find. The finer ones will get clogged really fast with the plastic just because it comes off so easily. So that works. But you can also use your deburring tool. So with this, if you get it right on the edge of the piece, you can drag it along the edge, and you get kind of these cool little curly cues that come off that show you what you've cut. And that will take the burr off really quickly. Sometimes you have to go kind of at this angle, and then sometimes you have to go up towards the top angle to cut the other edge of the hole. But I can feel that edge is really good. So then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And that edge is good. Now my top, I can definitely feel where the saw hit and went in and went out. With that, you might be able to run it across the top to get some of those, but probably the file is a better choice for that, or a sander of some kind. But it's okay if it's not perfectly smooth. Really, we're just looking for sharp edges, or anything that could get stuck, caught, or cut somebody or cut something. So I'm going to go ahead and use the deburring tool on all of the other sides, all 4 of the other sides. Usually you have a little bit left to go backwards kind of in the one corner. So because I can't quite start perfectly in the corner here, I can get close to it and run this whole edge. And then the other side, same thing, I can get close to it and run the whole edge. But then that last little bit on the end here that I didn't get, I usually just kind of go a little bit backwards. And if that doesn't work out for you, that could be just hit it with the file to get that last bit done. All right, and then let's see. We got this edge is not done. And then just, a little bit on the end with the file. And then we're back to the first edge that we did. Okay, so this piece can feel around, no more burrs, everything is pretty smooth. So I would say KB 26004 is ready to go. I'm going to set this one off to the side and bring out our next one. Let's stick with our rectangle pieces here. Let's go to, let's do this one. KB 26006 is our next one. So this one, if we look at the drawing, we've got 2 lines of holes on each side of the piece. All of the holes are, let's find it, here it is, 8x, 0.25 inch through. So all of these holes are also going to be 1/4 inch. So that is great. That's kind of what we're already set up for. And then if we look, they are 1/4 inch in from the outside and 1/4 inch in from this outside. So again, we can scribe our 1/4 inch lines down each side of this and then get our tape measure out to pop our snap punch at each of the 4 locations on each side. So one more time, I'm going to set my calipers to 0.25. I think it's been 0.25 this whole time, and if I just left it alone, I wouldn't have had to reset it, but I did not plan ahead. All right, 2.5. So, all right, we'll pick a side. I guess this side first. So we'll line up and go ahead and scribe all the way down. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side here. Line it up, and we'll scribe all the way down. And I like doing it on the coating just because it's easy to see the line on the coating where you kind of cut the coating out of the way. But right, if your coating got messed up when you're doing your cuts and stuff, feel free to peel back, use the Sharpie. That method always works as well. All right, so now we're here to snap punch. And let me slide this over a little bit more. I like to have it hanging off the edge so I know that the tape measure is on it instead of the edge of the table. And from our drawing, let's see, first hole is, okay, so this side is 0. Oh, but right now it doesn't matter. All right, so we'll pretend like this side is, it's this way, to the drawing, the way that we're marking it, because 0 is now at the top. So the first hole is 0.5 inches in, so go to 1/2 inch on our line. And snap that one in. Next one is 3.125. So 3 1/8 of an inch. So for me, that's 2 lines on my tape measure. Next one is 5.75. So 5 3/4. And then the last hole is at 8.375. So that's 8 3/8. So 8 1/4 plus 1/8. All right, so that side's done. Now we're going to shift over. We're going to do the same thing on the other side here. All right, so we work our way back through. First one again is at 0.5 inches. Next one is at 3 1/8, 3.125. Okay, then it was 5 3/4, 5.75. And then 8.375, 8 1/2 All right, they are all marked. Again, 1/4 inch hole is what we're drilling. So we are ready to go. We'll take this so the holes we're drilling are off the edge of the table, clamp it down. And let's do it. I guess we'll start on the end. All right, and then flip it over, do the other side. This one, I'm gonna bend that back. Seemed like it was peeling up. It made it hard to feel the snap punch location. And this corner too. That's it. All right, and I think the last one might have moved a little bit on me, but that's all right. Like I said, these holes are going to work out as long as you are close to the right location. And again, I'm storing this one for later, so I am going to mark KB 26006. All right, same process that we did on the last one. For this one, we're going to deburr all the holes. That last one is. That one's gnarly. There we go. I like to do it all on one side and then flip the piece over. But if you want to do like the 4 holes on this side, both sides, I mean, whatever. And the good part about this is like you can always feel which ones are done and which ones aren't done. So you can check kind of at any time. All right, and then we've got those edges that we were talking about from before. So same way, I'm going to do this down the edges. Again, perfectly fine to just file if you have a file. Or you can even do this. You can do this on like the wheel or the disc sander. But you have to be a little careful because, again, the plastic will clog it if it is a fine grit. But also, it's pretty easy to start melting the plastic if you kind of get too aggressive there. So if you're doing this on the disc sander, you have to have a very light touch. You do not want to take too much material away. I think this was the factory side. It's like a little bit of something here. And then definitely this side we got to get. All right, and a little bit on that corner, a little bit on that corner. This corner's good, and that corner was probably fine, but we did that anyway. All right, this piece is done. KB 26006, we'll set that on our finished pile over here and grab the next one. This is KB 26014. Actually, to flip it over because this side, the coating looks less messed up, so we'll work from that. All right, and we'll set this so our 0 is away from us. And everything is going to go on, well, I guess this edge. And it is going to be 1/4 inch up from that edge. So look at me, this time I did not reset my caliper. I left it locked at 1/4 inch. So we're ready to just go ahead and scribe that 1/4 inch line all the way along this edge. Perfect. And then go ahead and we'll rotate it this way and get that tape measure going again. All right, first hole is 0.813. So that is, once again, 3/4 inch is 0.75, a 1/16 inch is 0.625. Those two together make 813. So we go to 3/4 inch and then go 1/16 inch past that. Next one is 4.813. So we go 4 3/4 plus a 1/16. All right, then it's 8.813, and these numbers should sound familiar because they're the same spacing on the first piece we did, and that is because these holes will line up with the holes on that piece. All right, so 8 3/4, and 1/16 more makes 8.813. Then it's 12, all right, so we're at 12 and 12.813. 12 3/4 plus a 1/16 makes 12.813. And then the last one is at 16.813. So we're at 16 and 3/4 plus a 1/16 inch is 16.813. All right, and that is all the holes on this part. So they're just all on that one line. So we're ready to clamp it up. And then let's drill them. Okay, let's, guess I'll peel at this stage again. Let's relabel. This is KB 26014. All right, and now we're going to deburr. And the edges. All right, let's see how the corners did. That one needs just a touch up. I think that one was probably okay. This one definitely has a burr on the side. And that one is good. All right, 3 down. And we are left with KB 26005 is our last one. We have 2 of these, but they are identical, which means we could clamp these together and drill all the holes through both of them at the same time, and that would work out. Or you can do them one at a time. You see, again, this side looks like it's better to mark. Whoops. And our 0 is here, so it looks like, oh well, it's going to be this side. All right. So now we have the drawing kind of in the right orientation. And what we can do is we can mark on one, even if we want to drill them both. Either you're going to do the same process twice. I think I'm going to clamp mine together, and I'm going to drill them together. Just to save time. I think it's easier that way. But, of course, you can just do the same process 2 times if you want. But since we're marking, I would say too, like if yours are very different, like in size, then you might want to think about doing them separately. And then the other thing I'm looking at is like if I lay these down and they're flat on the bottom, they're about even on the sides, which we know because remember we ripped it to 15, so it was going to be roughly the same width. But on that angle, I think this one, the one in front, is just a little bit shorter than the one in the back. Ideally, then, what you want to do is you want to mark on the one that's shorter because, again, the worst thing that can happen here is when we drill these holes, if they go through the edge, we're not going to be able to hold the zip ties in. So if you mark on the longer one and you're probably a 1/4 inch in from the edge, I'll have to check that dimension, then on the shorter one, it's going to be less than a 1/4 inch in from the edge, and it might be a problem. So I'm going to mark on my shorter one, which is this one, but on this side of it, I guess, because that is the direction of the drawing. So we can just stay good with that. Now, I don't really need the other piece around right now while we're marking, right? Because I'm just going to line them up and clamp them before I drill. So the second piece can just kind of hang out on the side. And let's start breaking down what we got to do here. All right, so we have 2 rows of holes on each side. It is 1/4 of an inch in from this side, and these are at 14.75 of 15 inches, so it's 1/4 of an inch in from each side there. And these 2 holes on the diagonal are also dimensioned at 1/4 of an inch in. So that means essentially we have to scribe 3 edges with the 1/4 of an inch. And again, I will mention this. I mention this every time. This is not the most accurate way to do stuff. If we really cared about like hole-to-hole dimensions, we would measure everything from one corner. But because in this case we know we can get away with it, because we know what it's being used for, we're going to go ahead and do this 1/4 inch scribing all the way around. So we'll start on this side and drag ourselves 1/4 of an inch down. And then let's get that diagonal. That edge was a little rough. If you run into that problem where it won't slide nicely, then you might need to file it some first. And then finally, this edge. Perfect. And next up is the tape measure and the snap punch. So we're going to do same process. I'll go ahead and work on, say, this edge first. All right, first hole is 0.5 inches in from the edge. So we're going to line this up. Also, if you're not familiar with the tape measure too much, that end bit that wiggles back and forth, that is to account for the width of this. So if you're measuring against the inside of something, you push it in until it's flat. But in this case, because I'm measuring away from the edge, I want to make sure it's pulled nice and tight before I go to do my marks. Of course, I did just get done telling you that you can be off by quite a bit here, and it's going to be fine. So, you know. So there's 0.5. Next one is at 3 inches. We're getting good numbers with this one compared to the other one. 9.5, the good numbers continue. 9.5 right here. And then 12 inches. All right, let's jump over to the other side here. And we'll knock these ones out. So this is 0.5, same as the other side. I'm guessing they're all going to be the same until, you know, we run out of space. Nope, they're not. This one is going to be 3.125, so 3 1/8 inches, 3.125. Next up is 5.75, so 5 3/4. And then the last one is 8.375, so 8 3/8, 1, 2, 3 eighths right here. All right, now, this is the 0 side. So the long side here is our 0 side. And we are going to measure in from that edge to find these 2 points. Of course, we're going to be on an angle, so we're going to have to kind of adjust stuff around as we go. But we are looking for 2 inches in from the long side is where our first one goes. So it's going to be 2 inches, and we're looking for where the 2 inches crosses our 1/4 inch scribe line that we put there. So that's going to be, let me go to the, we can do it. All right, make sure everything is in all the way. So 2 inches is going to be right there. All right, and then the other one is 8.375, so that's 8 3/8 inches. So 8 and 3/8. So 8 and 1, 2, 3/8. So right here, 1/8 under a half. All right, and does that make sense? So this 8.375, so we should have about 7 inches to the end of the piece, and we do. So that seems to make sense. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 holes to go. And before we drill, let's just double check. Where is it? Yep. On this one, it is 10x 0.250 through, so these are all 1/4 inch holes. Let's, I don't know, clamp this side up first. And once again, just try to get the point in the little divot. And we just work our way around. We know there's 4 on this side. It's a really big gap in the middle. I didn't really pay attention to that when we were marking it. All right, those 4 are done. I'm going to rotate, and I'm going to hit the 2 on the diagonal next. I'm going to kind of work my way around the piece clockwise, as it were. Of course, it doesn't matter. You can drill in whatever order you feel you want to. I will say, though, kind of the closer you can get this to the table, obviously not where you're going to drill the table, but this plastic does tend to flex a lot. So you might have noticed when I'm drilling, every once in a while, it'll like grab and pull the drill down. That's usually because the plastic is bending when I go through. And then when the plastic bends, the hole changes shape and it grabs on the edge of the drill bit. So keeping it close to the table is helpful. Now that we only have a few holes left to drill. All right, one more here. And then on our short side, we got 4 more. All right, go ahead and do the peeling. If you wanted your plastic, your polycarb, to stay really pretty for as long as possible, you could not peel it here and instead wait until after you were done. Wait until you're about to assemble it on the robot. You could just peel back enough to be able to deburr the holes and stuff. But you know what? I said we were going to drill them together, and I didn't do that. So we can still use it as a guide, though. So, of course, I can go through and mark and drill this one exactly the way we did. What I was going to suggest we do is to take some extra clamps. And if we took these extra clamps, kind of while it was being held together nicely, we could put these clamps on. And basically, I'm just going to, really it's close enough by feel. I'm feeling the edges. They feel lined up. Or the gap feels the same everywhere. Then we can just sort of put these 2 clamps on. Now, the downside to having these clamps, you need at least 2, by the way, to stop it from moving. The downside of having these 2 clamps is when we go to drill, it's going to be a lot harder to clamp it up to the table. So I probably, in this case, will start working on the corner here instead of the edge, where I can still get close to the edge where I'm drilling, hopefully without having to take the clamps off. I think if I adjust this around in a variety of ways, we'll be able to do that. Now, if you were doing this, right, it's the same process. If you didn't drill these holes yet, you could still clamp it together like this. We would just have the divots instead of the holes that we would use as a guide to go through everything. And I'm going to go ahead and still clamp it to the table just because I am still one person. Let me see if I can get that one off the edge. So that one is off the edge there. And I'll clamp it here, and maybe I'll try to sneak one on there, right on the corner. This table has a little bit of a metal lip underneath, so that's the best we can do. All right, and double check that everything is lined up. If everything is lined up, now that we have it clamped together, they should not move relative to each other. So instead of going back and remeasuring everything, I can just drop this into the hole that's already there. And now it's transferred to the bottom piece. We're going to go ahead and do this all the way around. You might see this is spreading out pretty far here when I'm trying to drill. If that's happening to you, you can always just take another clamp and sort of like in the area where you're drilling, if you get a clamp close by, that will keep the pieces from bending and moving, which will make it slightly better. Like when it bends, my hole might not be perfectly aligned, although those look pretty good. And again, we know these holes don't have to be the most accurate, so it's generally going to be okay. But like I can sort of work my way around with this clamp as I go. We're going to drill over here somewhere, so maybe I throw this clamp in between the next two holes that we're going to drill. And that is still off the table. Cool. This one is right by that clamp, so let's do that one. And now I think those two are pretty far away from the table, so it's going to bend a lot when I go to start drilling. So now this one I can take off. I'm going to leave my two small ones on always so I don't lose my positioning. And we'll kind of bring it in. So we'll bring it in like this. There we go. There we don't go. There we go. All right. And I could do a little one here to just keep it from spreading. Look at these two holes. And yeah, the last two are pretty far out here, so let's just go ahead and adjust it in as far as we can. We're going to be limited because this clamp is hitting, but I don't really want to take that clamp off until we're done. So I'm just going to kind of get it as close to the corner here as I can. And we can throw this last clamp on in between them just to hold it from spreading. Again, probably not needed. All right. Double check. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way through. And then 2 on the diagonal all the way through. So now that all the holes are drilled, the pieces are done being kind of manufactured, we can take the clamps off. And I think I said I was going to relabel this one, and I didn't yet. So let's go ahead and relabel this one. KB 26005. And you already know we're going to deburr all of the holes for this piece. We're going to deburr all of the holes on both sides for the other one. We're going to clean up the edges and the corners just to make sure everything's good. And once I have that done, we will come back here and we'll double check all of our finished pieces. All right, we're back. We finished cleaning up our KB 26005, those angle cut pieces. Deburred, got the edges for all of those. And just to recap now, at the end of this video, which we're about to end, you should have 2 identical KB 26005s. There should be, what would you say, 10 holes in those, 2 on the diagonal, 4 on each side. They're actually going to be mirrors of each other because they're going to go on opposite sides of the robot like that, but because they're clear, you can flip them around whichever direction you want. All right, you should have 1 KB 26014. This is also known as the battery access panel with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes on the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes on the side. You should have a KB 26006 back hopper panel should have 4 holes on the top and bottom of this piece, or the 2 sides of this piece. And finally, we should have our KB26004. This is the bottom hopper panel. And this one, if you remember, we have all the holes on one edge, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those. The 2 that are a little bit in from the corner and 2 more on the sides, there are still 8 holes that would go on the other side that we have not drilled yet. We're going to be drilling those together with the floor that is pre-made, that aluminum piece that is pre-made for us in the kit of parts. And we are going to do that in the next video. But before we go, we're going to give another special thanks to our sponsors, Argosy, First, Aramco, and a special thanks to our hosts here, Lake Orion High School, Team 302.